Now, there has been mixed reaction to the government's proposal to extend the rent-a-room scheme to modular buildings. Under the proposals, people could get up to €14,000 a year tax-free for building a modular home in their back garden for rent. Opposition parties have criticised the proposal, calling the units beds in sheds. Is this the answer to the housing crisis? Let us know. Do you think it's a workable solution? 086 1800 964 or 0818 400 964. But I have two guests to give us their considered views on it. We're joined by Douglas Hurley, Managing Director of D&G O'Sullivan Hurley here in Ennis, and also here in Ennis, Sherry Fitzgerald McMahon and Diarmuid McMahon from said company. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thanks very much to both of you for coming in. I suppose, Diarmuid, with the housing crisis, any and all solutions are welcome. Is this workable, allowing modular homes and back gardens under the rent-a-room scheme? There's been a fair bit of debate that's kicked off around it. This is part of that debate. Is it pie in the sky, or is it something that should be pursued?
Oh, I don't think it's pie in the sky. I think you and I would have spoken a few years ago how the country has lacked that urgency, that kind of emergency spirit, if you like, that you had around COVID, and
a bit of outside the box thinking as well. Maybe
trying anything. Beds and sheds certainly catches the headlines, and it kind of it's good, like, to be fair.
Yeah.
But and actually there might be something in that as well. I think there's a few sides to this. So I think it's welcome, but it really depends on what regulation you put around it. So the devil's in the detail, and there are considerations. And I think, to be fair, you don't want it to end up as beds and sheds. You want equality about this. So I think a lot will be in the detail around, what building regulations and what rules will be around a planning exemption. So previously, when this was announced, it was going to be back 2 years ago. I think Douglas and I spoke to you at the time as well. It was kind of initially sounded out, and they were talking about, for family members that could move in, or as a granny flat for, somebody who couldn't trade down, but, their family could move into the house and granny could move into the flat, kind of thing. And now it's evolved so that you could potentially actually rent it out and get the rent-a-room €14,000 a year rent-free. I suppose when somebody's going to put a structure like that in their garden, it potentially has an impact that may not necessarily be positive to the value of the property itself. So you have to make sure how you do that and how you look after your property and how you get it done well and professionally. And I suppose then from a planning perspective, you're going to give an exemption, just how they structure that, and also have some control over it. So we would have discussed before, like in Ennis, you've got 2 sewage treatment plants. You've got the Clare Abbey system, which is at max capacity. We understand it's very hard to get numbers on it, that the Clon Road site has about headroom for about 1,000 units, which sounds like a lot, but the lead time to get a new treatment plant is about 7 years. So you need to start planning now to upgrade Clon Road, not when it gets full. So that's a lot of extra sewage connections if everybody puts a modular home in their back garden, and what does that do to sewage capacity treatment as well? Do you know what I mean? So so from an Irish Water perspective, they'll want to have some kind of control over this as to how many connections there are going to be, how many extra toilets are there going to be, and everything else. The devil's in the detail is what I'd say to you. But on the whole, I think if you can get units in, bypass the backlogs you have in planning, potentially get a rental income for people, solve a housing crisis, solve problems within families where you have people in their 30s who are still living at home because they're trying to save a deposit, all of those things. There's the potential in it, definitely.
Okay, something worth exploring. And I suppose, Douglas, discussed with yourself and definitely with Diarmuid many times in the past, the smaller landlords leaving the market, and they're probably, they're thinking it's a big investment for a lot of headaches and maybe not as much return as they would have hoped for, buying a home and renting it out. Is this more feasible for homeowners to install these modular units, lower costs than investing in a home? And even if you do end up with a troublesome tenant or whatever it might be, you haven't put as many eggs on the basket as you would do with an actual brick and mortar home.
Yeah, 100%, Alan. I think this is the first piece of legislation, or the potential legislation, that may help with the rental crisis, whereas anything to date has nearly led to landlords leaving the rental market. So it has had a detrimental effect, whereas I think this piece of legislation, it's not going to solve the housing crisis, nor should it, but it definitely will, hit a niche in the market that I don't think society is catering for. In terms of single people on their own. I mean, we were stopped building bed sets and all that years ago. So I think it'll definitely fit a niche in the market. Just to reiterate what Diarmuid was saying, the devil will be in the detail, and it's one way how these things are sold, and saying it's beds and sheds, it's the wrong narrative to have out there.
It's more for a snappy soundbite from the opposition, I think. But they're raising a legitimate concern.
100%. And now is the time to get it and get it right. Let it be in the certification that the suppliers for these homes or modular homes are providing. Put something in where they have to be a certain energy rating cert. Put something in where they have to meet certain regs. And let the suppliers, or to get your exemption, to get your tax exemption, or to get your planning exemption, you have to supply a certain amount of regulation. Now, we don't want to over-regulate but let it be a birth cert of a certain level or something like that. So now is the time to get it right, and get it right from the start. But 100%, I think it's there. It will... there's families to avail of it, older people, because the whole downsizing and this older population we have, we're not catering for it high up or low down. People that want to downsize and people that want to move, maybe this will suit some people, that they'll be able to go in to convert or build a 40 square metre and maybe cater for a family or get supplement income. So I think 100% it's a positive move and will help with the rental crisis and the housing crisis. But again, as Diarmuid was saying, the devil will be in the detail at the start of it, and I think it's something we need to get right in terms of maybe certification, what's needed in terms of they have to be a certain level, maybe energy efficiency, and have to meet certain regs without over-regulating it. So maybe put it on the supplier to, that's supplying these, used to supply a certain amount of regulation if they're to be exempted.
And Diarmuid, that is going to be crucial, isn't it? Particularly for there are, some landlords maybe, with demand far exceeding supply. There can be a tendency, even though we've talked about, the difficulty some smaller landlords face, and that landlords can feel like they're tarred with the same brush and so on, but that there can be some out there, tenants fall foul of landlords who have substandard properties and they don't maintain it because there's no impetus there. They feel like, well, I'll find someone else to move in. I don't need to really invest in this place and keep it looking well. But that's going to be key here, isn't it? The type of modular building you should be building if you want to get involved in this is going to be crucial as well, isn't it? And I suppose other issues like access to the modular home, you're going to have a side gate. You're not going to want to have somebody traipsing through your house every day to be able to access their accommodation.
Yeah, and I suppose there's some commentary on how fair that system may be. Do you know what I mean? In terms of it suits people who are on a larger plot, other people who are more confined plot won't have the same opportunities. I suppose what I encourage anybody who's thinking about this is there's a saying in estate agency is the day you buy is the day you sell. So, and the day you add on to your property is you've got to think about... You're
looking ahead to what you're offering on the market later on.
Correct, exactly. And just on that point in terms of getting it right, huge frustration for all estate agencies. We get to the point where we get the sale agreed, great excitement, great frenzy. I have the saying that the day somebody's sale agrees a property is the day they're in peak love with it, and then they start thinking of every reason not to sign the contract until the contract is exchanged.
They're pushing their hand towards the contract.
Well, I can't. But I mean, but then once they've signed the contract, well, they've obviously made the right decision, because there's no going back. Yeah. But my point is that any change you make to a property, it's most like. We see people doing things unilaterally without recourse to planning, and they think, gosh, that's grand, sure, I get away with that. But then when the day they come to sell, it suddenly becomes a problem, because everything is being looked through and gone through in terms of planning, in terms of certification, in terms of everything. So be careful if you're doing this. Just do it right, get it done the right way, whatever the regulations are when they come out, get it done right, and you might think, I'm never going to leave that property, but continually we see families whose personal circumstances, you can have separations, you can have deaths, you can have all kinds of different things. So anticipate anything you do to your property that you're planning for that point in time, that it's going to go to market.
Lots of texts coming in on this already, and some questions I might put to you guys in just a moment. But a listener here saying, beds and sheds, your last guest, that was the historian Colm Liddy talking about begging in 1830s. Claire, your last guest was talking about single room mud huts. Is this the trajectory the government has us on? I don't think we're quite going down that road. Touch on some other issues though, Douglas. The proposal suggests removing the need for planning permission for these units. Is that a sensible move, or could there be difficult consequences, potential consequences from that in terms of maybe neighbourhood disputes or overdevelopment?
100% there is potential, but again, as Diarmuid was saying, as long as you do within the legislation of what's going to be brought out, and one of those is going to be is that you still leave 25 square metres of free lawn space. So they need to be careful with that. So I mean, if the government give very clear pointers and people adhere to them, well then there shouldn't be disputes. And to go back to your initial question, like if people go for planning for all these things, our planners, we already know where our planners are getting clogged up and trying to get bigger schemes to market and stuff like that. If they're getting caught up with 40 square metre sheds and hundreds and hundreds of applications, it's just going to need to a further glut and backlog. So I think the idea of exempting it is to free up the planners for the bigger projects, and so we can get it's only a piece of the parcel for this overall housing crisis, but I think definitely it's a help, it's a positive, but needs to be carried out in the correct fashion. And being exempt is going to free up some of the planning situation for more.
Just to add to that, just for people to understand, planning exempt doesn't mean that it doesn't have rules around it.
Yeah.
It has an exemption if you stick to the rules.
You go outside of those boundaries, you're subject to them.
Exactly. And typically what you'll have to get afterwards is a certificate of exemption. So you'll have to get a certificate from somebody to go on site, look at it and say, yes, you adhere to the rules. Here's a certificate to say you did it as per the rules. So you don't have to go through the planning process, but you have to stick to the rules. So it's not a free-for-all. Do you know what I mean? There will be structure around it so that it won't be beds and sheds.
I'll just put some of what's coming in to you guys. A text in here from a listener on 086 1800 964 saying, would it mean if you put a modular home on your property that you cannot do it for a family member? It sounds like you can get money from revenue if you rent to a stranger. Well, presumably you could rent it to a family member. I don't see any issue.
Yeah, 100%. Under the old rules, that was a problem. Actually, anybody that went to try and do it legitimately and put up these granny flats, there was a condition of the planning that it had to be to a family member. So I think this legislation will free it up, that it doesn't have to be to a family member, and you can rent it to a third party.
That's a tax question, rather, is it?
It seems to be. It sounds like you can get money from revenue if you rent to a stranger as opposed to a family member.
I don't know the answer to that. So will you get the 14,000 tax free if you rent to a family member?
No, I think that's already there, that you cannot. It has to be.
Has to be a stranger.
You can't. Okay, I think that's even already within the rent to room scheme. Is that it cannot be a family member that you're getting the 14 off.
Another one in here from another listener saying, do you know if you can build a modular home on your farm, not your backyard? I don't see any.
You can. Again, I suppose it'll be a function of whatever the detail that they bring out. Like, I can't imagine they'll have something against farmers.
Yeah, exactly. You're not going to be discriminated. A listener here saying these sheds, which is what they are a plaster on a wound. We have seen the effects of light touch regulation. Just look at the issues around mica pyrite and with defects in Celtic Tiger apartments. I would have to say, these sheds, which is what they are, I could take the point of plaster on a wound. You all want, brick and mortar homes, but we've taken outside. Yeah, I've seen pictures, I've seen companies who build modular homes, and I've thought when I've seen them, God, I wouldn't mind living in those myself.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it obviously depends. We've just spoken earlier on about there would have to be regulations as to you can't just build any old thing out your back garden or wherever it might be.
I think that's really sucking into that headline. But it's, there's some very, very good. I mean, as part of just regular housing, they discuss using more modular units for a full house, and there's no reason. I mean, the technology is absolutely there to do that, for not just something that's in your back garden, but to build a whole house out of it. So that's already the quality is can be very, very good. The problem was there was a view with modular homes that this would suddenly solve the housing crisis and speed up the product coming to market. But the bottlenecks in the Irish property market had very little to do with the construction process. Even if you were building by block construction or any other construction, once they can get in on site and get working, they'll fly through it relatively. You don't say it, the delays are everything bringing them
to that point,
not the on-site. When they're on-site, those guys will get on with it. You know what I mean? There isn't big time savings to be had in multi-unit development with modular homes, but the quality is excellent.
Okay, another one here from another listener on 086 1800 964 saying, I've designed and constructed and renovated many extra living areas beside and behind existing homes for many years. Your speakers are correct. They'll be pleased to hear that. A level of control must be retained by authorities in terms of services, access, design, style in its surroundings, impact on neighbouring properties. Modulars, garage conversions, cabins, etc. are all feasible but must be blending in correctly. And I suppose, Douglas, that'll be part of it as well, that they'll have to be of a type, standards, as you said, like heating ratings and so on.
100%.
And fitting in with surroundings might be a key part of that too.
Yeah, 100%. They're going to have to be single story. I mean, what was exempted development, it had to be single story, probably to the rear of your property or to the side. So as I say, the devil will be in the detail, but I suppose now is the time to get it right. But again, if done right, I think it can be nothing but positive. So it will.
Okay, not quite, to summarise then, not quite a plaster on a wound, definitely not sheds, definitely not the be-all and end-all catch-all solution to the housing crisis, but an idea worth exploring with the proviso, Diarmuid, that certain standards are in place.
Certain standards are in place, and that people are conscious that at some stage in the future their property is going to transact. So be conscious of that, be aware of that, plan for that, always plan with any property, whatever works you do, be it an extension or anything else, be it one of these modular units or not, that at some stage either you or your family or your estate or somebody is going to have to sell that property. So do things right, do it correctly, have the certification right, and then you'll add value to your property rather than damaging the value of your property.
Okay, we do have to leave it there, gents. Thank you very much. I do wonder if the phrase beds and sheds has just caught on too much now, but we shall see. My thanks to Diarmuid McMahon and to Douglas Hurley.